of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, 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 not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
No falafel on Fridays.
One time Kath Barbadoro was like, do you think is Bruce still alive? And I was like, nah, he died in an earthquake. It was the fastest my brain's ever made a joke. Like, I didn't even realize what I was saying until I was like, that's brilliant. Hearing it come out of my mouth.
You actually gained time with how quick that joke was.
It's fucking weird.
They only got his name when they were looking for him. Bruce! Bruce! Bruce!
Bruce. I had this neighbor who was he was a big pothead, and he named his cat The Winds of Change.
That guy's funny.
I asked him, why did you name your cat The Winds of Change? He was like, well, it's kind of a prank I played on myself. I thought it'd be really funny if whenever the cat gets out, I have to go out onto the lawn and onto the front lawn and yell, "The winds of change! The winds of change!" Like a wizard or something.
You gotta get Bruce on here.
Yeah.
He's got a point of view.
Bruce is very against Israel.
I don't fuck with AIPAC.
He's politically on point.
Yeah. It would be cool if he was super like woke on that shit. I don't.
I could not name like 3 things about this person.
Bruce. I feel like he wears suits. I used to attend bar at this restaurant. I had this weird daytime regular, this construction worker that would come in every day and get shithoused on Bud Lights at like 3 in the afternoon. He was out of his fucking mind. And I told him I did comedy, and he would go like, "Oh yeah, I know all these people." I would list off comedians. He'd go, "Yeah, I know that guy," and I thought he was just bullshitting me, until he started listening to himself. He was like, you know, Bruce. I used to work security for Bruce.
Oh.
And I was like, you know, what? That's fucking weird that you would know that is, right? Then he started telling me that he has like fucking his wife is from like Trinidad or something, and he has like all this weird political like money down there, and every once in a while he has to go down there and like commit a fucking weird war crime where he like threatens a bunch of people with a gun and shit.
Oh my god!
He's involved in all this weird drug trade stuff, and I was like, whatever, guy, because he was just a bar regular.
Yeah.
But then he told me that Bruce shit, and I was like, wait a minute, is this all real?
Whoa!
Should I be reporting you to something?
Yeah. Anyway, I think he's dead. Anyway.
It's weird you drink Bud Light.
Ah, man, that's not that weird. People that get drunk on light beer, especially Bud Light, are like they're a type.
It fills your like blood with light beer. Like if you drink like 20 light beers, the next day you wake up and you're hungover, but you mostly feel like a salinity change.
Yeah.
Your
your
pH
body.
goes off.
You
yeah.
pee and you're like, I'm just Bud Light now. I smell bad.
That's like a end times drinker, a person who gets hammered on just Bud Light.
It's like smoking like 20 Sky Dancer cigarettes. It's
Yeah.
like just smoke a cigar.
It's a carton of Virginia Slims.
Yeah.
You can play the most games with it. Okay, if you're playing a bunch of games.
What
Would
kind
you
of games?
Would you like to play a game? I have the joke about it, but I liked making the wizard staffs.
Yeah.
Where you finish the beers and tape them together, then you have a big staff,
Those
and then
are
you're
fun.
drunk, so you start hitting people with it. And then and once enough of you are drunk and you all have staffs, you get to start jousting with it, and that kind of hurts.
Oh,
That's fun.
It's really fun.
That's just how you get hurt, right?
Well, it's just beer cans. So.
Oh, cans. I thought it was glasses.
Yeah, I was thinking.
No.
I thought you were talking about bottles.
I thought, I was like, wow, that's how you get hurt. But cans, oh, yeah.
You know, you get
that's fine.
I don't think
you
even
fight your
physically
friends
that
with a
would
broken
work.
bottle.
That's why I was so impressed. I was like, you guys are real ingenious drunks.
We had a mechanical engineer get shit-faced with us because he was going through a divorce, and we made some impressive stuff.
College was fun.
Anyway, welcome to the show, everyone. I am Jake Flores. I've got with me Carlos Delgado.
Hello, Carlos Delgado.
And Alex Ptak.
Poop, poop.
Yeah. That part where you were talking about that wasn't on record, so it's just
Oh.
going to sound like you just said that.
All right, no explanation then.
New catchphrase.
Poop, poop.
All right, let's move on. I don't want to cover it.
No,
I
let's
don't wanna
dwell
explain.
on it.
I don't want to explain.
All right.
It's
so,
better if we don't explain.
hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. This week I got something a little bit special planned, a little bit different. You know, we've been kind of riffing on the news lately as a weekly show. But there's an ongoing project I've sort of been working on that I want to sort of belt out today, which is a little history of the current sort of non-nationalist anarchist burgeoning state in Rojava, Syria, that is fighting against ISIS.
What's that? Pod damn America's going to Syria.
I like that.
Ding 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 diddling ding ding diddling ding ding diddling.
Get Grandma on the roof of the car.
Yeah,
Play
yeah.
your Syria music.
Except she's on a tank.
Ding ding ding.
Yeah, you know, a good old-fashioned Syrian banjo song.
I'm excited to learn.
I'm doing this because
can be fun.
because there's this thing happening in Rojava that hasn't happened like since the Spanish Civil War, and everyone is so splintered that like I almost went, oh, maybe I shouldn't do an episode about Rojava because like it's a little bit insulting to some people that are hardcore leftists. A lot of people are, you know, especially people that are nerds and like very self-involved with this shit will kind of be like, oh, you think I don't know about Rojava, you know? There's a lot of like anarchist types around right now that are they will not shut the fuck up about Rojava.
Well, they're not listening to us right now.
Some of them might be, and that's why I'm doing this little warning up front because also in my life, as a person who's like into fringy politics, but also it has a completely normal, like I'm a comedian, I meet everybody, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you if you're heavily involved in the anarchism on the left and you think everyone knows about this, you are fucking wrong.
Oh yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, a lot of people don't, and like I didn't until like I don't know, like a year ago, and I started reading about Piss Big Granddad and all that shit. Oh,
There's
no,
a loud bus.
it won't pick
This
on the
is
mics.
just a preface if you thought like Jake actively was a fighter in Rojava, and let you know that he still lives in a haunted house in Brooklyn and is just telling you what he's read.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But I thought it'd be fun to do a little breakdown of just like what's going on, you know, a little entry level beginner story. I don't, know everything about this or whatever, but it's a really cool fucking story. And the more I read about it, I was like, this just kind of rules. Like, it's just interesting.
Yeah.
How similar, just as like an introduction, how similar do you think it is to like the Catalonia state? The anarchist one, not, just in general.
Well, it's smaller. One of the things that they sort of talked about a few years ago when they did a big story on it was that like 60,000 people joined to fight against Franco, communists and anarchists in Spain, and that was like at a time when that sort of thought was like way more sort of widespread and common, and we didn't have this sort of situation where it's, oh my god, communism is a dirty word and all this shit. So it's weird because it's like
all they had to do was win, and it wouldn't have been a dirty word.
That kind of is why the one in
tried harder.
Rojava is a little bit weirder. Like the situation in Rojava is comprised of Kurds who are sort of just sort of like fighting in their own self-defense, and then like this weird thing where in the back of a magazine you can see an ad that's like, come to Rojava and fight for, and there's like
sunny Rojava. Just a guy sitting on top of ISIS corpse.
no yeah, basically the way Piss Big Granddad talked about it was that like he saw like advertisements on like websites that were like like black, like red stars on black backgrounds and like chicks holding Kalashnikovs and shit, and like it looked like fucking like come have a war adventure kind of thing or whatever. Yeah, in a weird way.
Do we need to introduce who that is?
Okay, so actually you're right, we're jumping the gun. I'm gonna get to that and I'll sort of address that question as we get back around to it, but I'm gonna start way back in the late 70s.
Oh, so now we're recording. Okay.
Well, we've been recording.
Everyone is doing the funky chicken.
We go back in time.
Yeah.
Cocaine is in vogue. Boogie nights.
Yeah.
Disco
The
ducking.
70s.
Metaphor.
Actually, I misspoke. The story starts in the late 1940s.
God damn it.
I'm sorry. We're going to just quickly jump forward to the
We're
70s.
going back to the war effort, boys.
The fuck did I say all that disco duck shit?
No. We'll get back to Disco Duck. 40s, big band music.
Ragtime. It's just a different country. There was no big band.
Trombone.
Yeah. Just a trombone in the desert.
That's the worst mirage ever.
Yeah. Okay. So in the late 1940s, was born in eastern Turkey a man named Abdullah Öcalan, known by the nickname Apo. A-P-O. The problem with Apo, no, all right.
I was waiting for Carlos to say.
No. I sacrificed that to the pod.
God, that's fucking dumb. Okay, so there's this guy named Apo, right? And he's born in eastern Turkey in this really poor village. And
But he's voiced by a white guy.
Yeah. And Raghav is friends with him now. Raghav hung out with
With Apo.
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Apu.
If
with
you don't
Apu.
show up for the pod, you're going to get roasted. That's the rules.
Roasted.
Yeah. Okay, so Apo's born in somewhere between 1946 and 1948. He doesn't know how old he is. That's how fucked up Eastern Turkey is, right?
They don't have years.
He just doesn't like.
They don't have
They
years.
don't think that's the highest thing I've ever
Don't
heard
even
you say.
have day or night.
It's all a blur in Eastern Turkey.
Damn, son.
His mother is ethnically a Turk. He identifies as a Kurd. And so what's really interesting is if you look up the Wikipedia page for Abdullah Öcalan, it's written from the perspective of like the way the West views the PKK and the Kurds in eastern Turkey, very unsympathetically. It's and that's on part because of the Turkish government, which is actively sort of engaging in a bit of a genocide against like Kurds.
The Kurds. Right.
So we had Dojan come on last week and sort of talk about that. He's a Kurd from Turkey, right? So it's kind of similar to Israel and Palestine, how like the official story is that like there's this two-sided war, and you know there's a lot of bad people on both sides. When like the more you look into it, in reality, there's kind of a
bit of a
one-sided
situation,
like apartheid thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of really important
Is
to
it
the story.
a similar kind of struggle to Turkey and the Armenian genocide?
Well, that was very organized and clean, and
Or is this just like general racism and oppression against Turks?
the Kurds.
Kurds?
I don't want to misspeak because I'm not an expert on this.
Fair enough. Back to the script.
What did I tell you about improving? All right, everything I've said thus far, I've read off of a piece of paper.
Don't worry, we don't edit the podcast.
Yeah. I also don't.
I called Kurds Turks a second ago. That's just gonna be in it. That's just gonna be in the show. Okay, great.
Yeah, well, I mean, is it a secret that we're fucking morons? Like, I don't think so.
If you see the Instagram, you'll know I'm a moron. Anyways,
Hey, there's less haunted mannequins in this room than last week.
I've been just carrying trash bags of mannequin parts down the stairs, and like
mannequin genocide.
it just never ends. There's just so much haunted mannequin in this apartment.
Okay.
Well, it keeps leaving the bags.
Look behind you over there. It's just over there. I'm getting close to getting it towards the dumpster. It's just very heavy.
Oh.
It's the size of a plastic human.
Oh no. Okay, well, back to history.
Yeah.
Okay. So, where was that? Apo, right? The Turkish, there's sort of like a
His Wikipedia was unsympathetic.
right. Okay, that's because the Turkish government is, in some senses, sort of waging like a
Information war.
an ethnocide in a certain sense. We had Dojan come on last week and talk about how there's a sort of displacement of Kurds in eastern Turkey. There's a vague state in Iraq called Kurdistan, and there's really not a lot of places for these people to go. Right, that's basically the situation. But the Turkish media tells the story even to people in like Western Turkey as these people are like a terrorist group, right? And so, because they've been waging this war on Kurds, the Turkish government has had to buy a lot of weapons from the American government, right?
According to lore, weapons are the only thing that can kill the Kurds.
Now that's important because Apo
Did you read that in the ancient sea scrolls?
Apo went on to, he went to vocational high school, and then he went to a college called Ankara University, and he
became a wizard, Harry.
he transferred from another school, a law faculty, into Ankara University, which technically that type of transfer is illegal for some reason, but they allowed him to do it because he was involved in, let me look up the name of this, as a young man was involved in a revolutionary group called Devgenk, or the Revolutionary Youth Federation of Turkey. So he was this young Marxist-Leninist, and in the midst of all these sort of left-wing, right-wing conflicts in Turkey in the late 70s, he founded the Kurdish Workers' Party, which is the PKK, right? So
Marxists fucking love their acronyms.
They're very good at them.
Yeah, they're always like, I haven't seen you at Revcom.
Yeah, they always pick letters that look really good in block letters, like P's and K's and shit like that.
What was the name? Oh, the name of the Soviet Revolutionary Army was Milrevcom, and I always fucking loved how many parts of words are all crammed together.
Yeah, and it sounds kind of like MILF.
Yeah,
That's
it
fun.
does sound like MILF. A lot of layers.
Oh, MILFCon.
Mm-hmm.
You going this year?
Let's go together.
I got an extra ticket.
Hey, I'll bring my inflatable MILF.
Oh, I'll bring my juice box.
Let's start a revolution of MILFs.
MILF Revcon.
Yeah. All right. We did it. We did the riff. So Apo founds the PKK, right, which is the Kurdish Workers' Party.
This is not scripted.
And the Kurdish Workers' Party sort of is framed in like the Western media and in this Wikipedia page as waging a communist insurgency against the Turkish government. Now that can be viewed like that.
Yeah.
But
there are many sides.
I'm trying to stress that that's a bit of a reframing of sort of a self-defense thing, right?
Uh-huh.
But he's also, kind of a leftist, like revolutionary. So he's not sort of like, let's escape. He's like, we got to fight this.
Sometimes it's cool to take over the government.
Yeah, that would be the entire idea, right? So
how French of you.
We got this situation where Apo and the PKK are fighting against the Turkish government, and the Turkish government is buying so many guns from the U.S. government.
When are we?
1950s.
Well, this sort of wages on from 78 when the PKK is founded through like today. Like it's still going on.
Okay,
right?
so
I'm glad you asked. I was very off.
I need to know. I'm not sure what time we are now.
Okay.
So
no more ragtime.
yeah. Sorry. We went from ragtime to the PKK being founded in
So
1978.
we're
Give
in
us the song era. Give us the time era through song, if possible.
Okay. all right. So
we're in the 80s, baby.
Yeah.
Outstander.
Hip hop is being invented. Punk rock is being invented, but they're dorky early forms.
Oh yeah.
They're like, I am an anarchist.
Oh yeah.
Break it up, y'all.
Yeah. Ha ha.
Can you feel the beat within my heart? Can you leave the love out to
There you
the
go.
stars?
That's where we're at. Okay. So
Thank you.
a little further into the 80s and 90s, as the Turkish government is buying all these weapons from the U.S. government to fight the PKK and enforce all this, terror or whatever.
Yeah.
They're buying so much from the U.S. that they sort of ask the U.S. to sweeten the pot a little bit. They're like, hey, we're giving you a lot of,
Can we have like a punch card situation?
yeah, like can we get a little reward
buy
here,
10
right?
RPGs, get tank free.
And the reward is to put the PKK on a list of terrorist organizations, right?
Oh.
So the PKK is now officially a terrorist organization according to exactly 2 entities.
What if they didn't get that at first? They were like, we wanted tanks. You give us democracy or bureaucracy? And then they're like, no, you idiot. You don't understand.
I think outsourcing your enemy to the United States is pretty strong.
That's a
high
hard
value card. That's
Yeah.
very OP.
Yeah.
It's a blue shell in Mario Kart.
It's a blue shell in Mario Kart.
It's a sweet move.
That's a three-bar super move.
Yeah.
Through
Pretty-
all these metaphors, it is good.
So The PKK is labeled a terrorist organization by the U.S. and the UN, because this happens through the UN.
Yeah.
And only those two entities. No other country considers the PKK a terrorist organization, right?
Wow.
So this is kind of like if, that we did this to Palestine or something like that.
Yeah.
This is interesting because of how complicated the situation out there is. Now, the U.S. considers the PKK to be a terrorist organization, yet its subgroups, the YPJ and the YPG, fight alongside the U.S. They interact with each other. So there are people that are literally in the PKK and thus in the YPG and thus in the PKK, who are in like both of these organizations that literally like put on one shirt and they're enemies of the U.S. and then go around the corner and put on another shirt and now they're fighting along the U.S. It's really fucking weird, right?
Yeah.
When did the YPG and YPJ come out?
The YPG and the YPJ came out later after what's about to happen next. And so what happens next is in the 90s.
We're in the 90s, baby.
Information sort of starts to leak from this whole thing that's happening in eastern Turkey, right? There's a newspaper of people that are sort of reporting on the war crimes happening against Kurds that is technically legal by their government, but it's like de facto illegal. Like they keep trying to publish this newspaper, but if you're caught reading it in the street, you're like gunned down by the police. You get the shit beaten out of you. You bombs thrown at you, right?
It seems pretty illegal.
It's de facto illegal.
Yeah.
It's weird that they didn't just go, "Oh, that's illegal," right?
Right.
Yeah.
They just sort of made it de facto illegal. The newspaper is called Gundam.
Yes, that's a very powerful tool.
Yeah.
Is if you can use Gundams, you'll probably win your struggle. I've seen it many times before. You can even just give them to teenagers.
Oh, what a beautiful symphony to my ears.
It's weird because it's called Gundam because it's not named after Gundams.
Yes.
This is happening in like the 80s.
What are you saying to me right
They're
now,
called
Jake?
mobile suits.
Yeah.
I am the king of hearts.
It's a newspaper.
Zex
right?
Marquis.
Trying not to make this confusing. Okay.
It's weird because it's just the coincidence that word sounds like the word for Japanese anime
And you
about
tell
flying
me-
robots.
You tell me there is no God.
But this newspaper Gundam, this is really funny because like I was reading about this and there's like a couple instances where these words just match up to other shit, and there's like this place in Turkey where all this horrible shit's going down that's called Batman, which is spelled Batman.
Oh no.
So I'm reading about like these horrific war crimes, but they're happening in Batman.
It's a city with no parents.
Hell yeah.
The mass graves filled Batman.
So the Gundam newspaper, it's really interesting. So I watched this documentary called Witnesses of War.
Yeah.
And it's an interview with a bunch of people that worked for Gundam. And they sort of report on war crimes. Holding in a laugh at the
I
worst.
flinched a lot when he said they worked for Gundam. But let's just keep going.
How do I get an
Let's just keep going.
So these people that work for Gundam are telling these stories about how, while they're reporting on all these attacks that are happening against the PKK and against Abdul Öcalan, aka Apo, they're being pressured by the government not to tell the whole story, right? So at some point in the 90s, Apo is going pretty hard, right? And the Gundam newspaper starts to report on all these war crimes, and I'm just going to put out like a trigger warning or whatever if you are like listening and you don't want to hear something horrific. I'm about to talk about war crimes. These are some pretty gruesome acts that they reported on.
I'm going to try my best to make this funny.
I'm going to try not to make it too fun.
So, for example, one reporter wrote a story about an incident of torture in which a Kurd was forced by the police to eat shit, just eat excrement. And he wrote the story over and over and over again and sort of tried to hide the line in the middle of the paragraph, like the story, like you I don't know, like you're padding a paper you're writing or whatever. But every time it was published, the specific part about that was taken out, right?
Yeah. Having to eat shit.
Yeah, that having to eat
I had a
human
very
shit.
similar punishment assigned to my ex-wife, who can eat shit. Deborah.
You got a hell of a lawyer, Ptak. You got a hell of a lawyer.
So
Keep him on retainer.
they would see all these people sort of like getting their villages burned down and shit, and they would try to tell the story, and the local government would tell them, you can't tell that story. In fact, what you have to do is you have to report on Oppo, and you have to call him Baby Killer Akalan and Terrorist Akalan, right? They have to give him all these weird, wacky wrestling
This is
nicknames.
what they have to do to keep the newspaper legal.
Yeah, well, their newspaper's technically legal, but
If they want to maintain the ability for people to buy it and be killed in the street for reading it.
okay, yeah. So I should make something
change
clear.
These names.
A lot of so actually, Gundam itself wasn't censored that much, but a lot of people had to write for other newspapers too. So
Yes,
all this
okay.
censorship is when they're trying to get their writing into like the big mainstream newspapers. They're basically writing like a fucking zine, right?
Yep.
They're like the Xeon Empire Weekly.
Which is the most leftist thing you can do.
Yeah.
Publish a zine.
right. They're selling them
yeah.
out of a bike shop in fucking Eastern Turkey or whatever, right?
Buy an espresso, get the zine.
Yeah. So, this censorship happens when they're like sort of trying to get their shit into the actual mainstream press, right? Another thing that happens in which, like, let me
Loading.
hold on, let me pause real quick.
Loading.
Okay, so a couple things happen. Like, for example, there's like paper boys like riding around town, delivering.
Is that an anarchist group?
It's a rapper.
No, it's
in
a
Atlanta.
That's from a TV show. But there's like kids that are like delivering newspapers, and there's this kid that's delivering a newspaper, and he's delivering Gundam to someone, and so a police officer just grabs the newspaper and then beats the shit out of him with it. And literally, the way the kid told the story was that he put the newspaper on the back of his head and then somehow karate chopped the newspaper in half on his head.
Whoa!
How
Yeah.
would you even? Is it made out of wood?
I don't know. It's really weird. There's this video of this kid just like, and then he karate chopped it somehow in half on my head. It doesn't make any fucking sense.
I'd like to nominate this policeman for the greatest martial artist in our country.
And
Show me the Din Mach.
So they're trying to sell Gundam at paper stands, right? And they're getting harassed so much by the government that like newsstands are afraid to sell Gundam, right? So what happens is like they return the newspapers. They won't sell it, right? So Gundam goes and talks to the government, and they say like, we need to like. We can't distribute our paper. It's technically illegal. What's going on? And so we'll figure out a solution, right? So the solution ended up being because no one wanted to distribute it for fear of being attacked by the police.
Yeah.
Now you can buy all the Gundam you want at the police station, right?
Oh.
That's like a sitcom.
Yeah. So it was like this guy that was doing this interview was like, it's the most. He used the word tragicomic, which I think is like it's like the most ironic thing that's ever happened to him because he's like. Yeah, no one's going to go buy this anti-police newspaper at the police station when the police are known for beating the shit out of you if you support this newspaper, right?
It's illegal, but only in the way if you buy it, you're sent to be someone's butler.
It's like they're trying to negotiate with a monkey's paw.
Yeah. It's really weird. So, anyway, another thing that happens is that the authorities and police and shit, they bust up a bunch of Gundam writers, and they grab their typewriters, right? And they fucking nice. They tear out the letter A and a question mark off of this typewriter. And the guy goes, "Why did you only tear? Like you could have just destroyed my typewriter. Why did you only tear off the letter A and the question mark?" And the guy goes, "I tore off the letter A because I know you're going to write about Oppo, right? APO, which is weird because he has another name."
Very clever.
Oppo.
You can't spell Oppo without A.
And he goes, "Well, why the question mark?" And the police officer goes, "I tore off the question mark because I know that you have questions about Oppo, Kurdistan and the PKK, right? He's like,
This guy's a fucking magician.
it's weird. It's like the most, like, they don't even just make it illegal. They have to do all this weird, artistic interpretation of fucking attacking these people.
You
right?
can only be a part of the police force in Turkey if you are a comic book supervillain.
Yeah, it's like Captain Riddler.
You need hands made of knives that can chop open newspapers and schemes.
Ah, yes, Chapo.
Chapo.
Ch-
El Apo.
yeah.
El Apo's Trap House.
Alpo. Can't type about that anymore either.
Nope.
Dog food.
Well,
What
that was
do you
their
think of
fallback articles.
Anything with an A.
yeah, it's really fucking weird, right? So the reason that they were trying to suppress all these stories is because the stories that they were actually reporting on exposed some pretty gruesome things. One story reported on a family. This is the way the guy told the story. They got hit with a mortar, and when the mortar went down, it basically landed on their house. They heard it launch into the air. They all ran into one room to hide together. The mortar hit that room.
Oh.
They survived, but the way he told the story was, family of six fucking legs, right?
Oh.
Which I don't know if they all had one leg.
They had 12 before.
One guy had like 3 legs. No one else had. I don't know.
You got your leg on my leg.
You got your leg on my leg.
Another thing happened
Reese's.
where
Let's call the whole thing off.
another incident happened where a number of Gundam reporters were walking through the desert, and they see this group of 1,000 to 2,000 people walking to Iraq. They're just trying to escape Turkey, which borders Iraq and Syria, right? They're walking to Iraq, and they stop. They see all these people. They're fucking missing eyes and limbs and shit because they've been blown apart so much by the Turks that they stop, and this guy pulls out his camera, right? He's got like a video camera on his shoulder to take a look and just report on the incident, right? Report on the scene. A helicopter flies by. He points his camera at the helicopter to try to, take a video of this helicopter.
Another mortar whistle.
No, the helicopter disappears. 2 fucking fighter jets spot straight from the U.S. military.
Shut the fuck up.
Fucking turn around.
They got
and
like Fat Betty painted on the nose and shit.
Yeah.
They're like, you get them, boys.
They bomb the shit out of this group of 1,000 people in the desert.
Whoa, right of 1,000 people?
Yeah, and they were walking away to try to escape being bombed, right?
Oh my fucking god.
So the way he told the story was, he goes, "Oh my god, they thought my camera was a fucking rocket launcher." Yeah. Awkward.
You must feel like such a rational guilt if you're the camera guy. It's not your fault at all.
They thought you had the rocket launcher from GoldenEye. Yeah.
Well, actually, that camera could have overheated and exploded because it was charging a
the
Samsung Galaxy Note.
Two sides. Two sides.
Did you think this was over, audience? This will never end.
I'm starting to hate this joke. God, it's like in my brain now. I can't stop saying it. Also, it doesn't help that like we live in a society where bombs keep going off, so just every time I read about something horrible happening, Samsung Galaxy.
Samsung Galaxy.
Another incident involved a man's house, an entire village being burned down.
So hold on. That was bullshit, though, right? Like, they knew it was a camera. They just bombed them anyways, right?
I mean, who knows? But like, they probably didn't care,
Yeah, all right, fair. Yeah. They probably didn't give a fuck anyways. Okay.
It's probably like when the cops pull you over and they see you holding like a something that's very obviously not a gun, like a giant number 1 finger hand from like the Mets stadium. And they're like, "Sir, stop resisting."
That thing can shoot a flag that says "bang" on it. Get him.
Yeah. It's like a reason to bomb somebody. I guess.
Fair. Okay.
And I'm gonna go with probably that's they just wanted to bomb them, because another incident involved a bunch of Kurds traveling around in a minibus, like a wackadoo little like van thing.
Yeah.
In a part of Turkey where there's a bunch of checkpoints, right? So the way that the Turkish government told the story was that the PKK, which is the people in this van apparently, stopped and blockaded a street as an act of war, right?
War vans.
Vans of war. War
They must be
vans.
stopped with
Yeah.
our jets.
It's the clown from Twisted Metal, like his van.
That would be
Sweet
the
Tooth.
one exception.
Oh,
I feel like that's a threat.
I didn't know Sweet Tooth was in the PKK.
Yeah.
Hell yeah,
He
dude.
wants to paint the town red
So
With pamphlets.
with communism.
So the way witness told the story was that the police stopped the van. And by the way, the story from the Turkish government is that the van did this blockade thing. What actually happened was the police stopped the van, open fired on the van with a machine gun, and then, just because I guess that wasn't enough, busted out a fucking rocket launcher and blew up the van.
What?
Yeah.
That sounds like a. Oh man, that sounds like a Family Guy sketch.
Like,
That's
why-
ridiculous.
Why is it not
That's
enough to just shoot it?
ridiculous.
And when the
Then-
IDs,
Jesus.
so when they check you at checkpoints, they
Yeah.
check your IDs, right?
Right.
When the IDs of the deceased Kurds were returned to their families,
Yeah.
completely unburnt, which is weird because the bodies were burned to death, which means they took their IDs and then killed them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Damn,
Right?
son.
Pretty fucking wacky. So another event that happened involved basically gas bombs. This is a big thing that
The one not okay type of bomb.
You know, the whole convention they had at Geneva.
Oh, MILFCon?
Yeah, MILFCon, MILFRevCon.
MILFCOM gas bomb. So that these guys, I don't know.
I don't know what's happening anymore.
Why?
I don't know why.
Why?
I don't know why. It just popped into my head like a jingle. So they would use these gas bombs against Kurds. They threw them at children, whoever. There was one event when, and this is fucking weird, but there's a bunch of Kurds sort of protesting, and this guy looks over, and the guy next to him, they threw a gas bomb at the crowd, and it landed in this guy's mouth.
Oh.
Somehow he caught it with his mouth, and it got stuck in his head, and they pulled it out, and just as they were pulling it out, it exploded its fucking head.
Oh.
This also happened to a child, pretty sad. And at one point in the street, a bunch of like 5-6-year-old children decided to throw rocks at the local police.
Uh-huh.
No, don't.
They
can't hear you.
The journalists were asked to report on this story as child terrorists. Headline child terrorists, right? That's like how bad the spin is
Right.
here.
So it's just like they're in Palestine.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
the
great.
same shit.
Ah!
Instead of, wow, you know, this situation is so fucked up that children are throwing rocks at the police. It's the police
Aggression
are
on both sides.
being threatened by these children,
A
right?
war of collateral damage.
So the children throw rocks at these police.
They were holding iPhones.
The police come back. They march this group of children and all the children in the village into a stadium. For some reason, this always happens. I guess I don't know if stadium's a word that just
This is a
translates to
bad
something else.
start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's another word for mass grave.
They don't kill them. They just beat the shit out of them, like walk all over them and stuff.
What?
Yeah. So this entire town of
the
kids
fuck?
just got like black eyes and shit. Right. This is really fucked up.
Oh fuck!
Sorry, I'm almost through this. There's one more.
Why?
Okay.
Oh my god.
So
This better end in lollipops and kisses, Jake.
no, it doesn't. It gets worse. Okay. So there's also this incident in which a PKK rebel, a prominent PKK rebel, gets killed by the Turks, and he's a high-ranking guy, and so they're supposed to sort of like put his body in a morgue and bathe it, which has something to do with some religious specific thing I don't quite understand, right?
That's some Turk shit.
His parents just want to see their child's dead body, one time before they bury him, and the fucking Turks, they're like, maybe, we can't show you him, and they're like, why? And they're like, why? How about you just don't? And they're like, okay, how about, can we just see his hand? And they're like, oh, that's fine. You can see his foot. I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And they open up the casket. They stole his fucking head. They just stole his head. No one knows what happened to his head. They just like they stole his head. I don't know how else to explain it.
There are no words.
Fucking crazy.
What is
right?
this fucking Game of Thrones? They take his face for the Tower of Madness?
Yeah.
The masks.
For jogging.
Yeah.
A Turk has no name.
Hell yeah. Okay, so while all this is happening,
That was just the list of the war crimes.
yeah.
Okay.
Jesus.
Sorry.
A long time.
We're at the end of it. It's pretty fucked up. There's obviously a lot more, but these are just the ones that sort of came out of this documentary on these like rogue journalists, right? So that's basically the situation, right?
Yeah.
Now in 1999, the Turks finally capture Apo. All right. They capture him and they put him in this prison that's on an island called where is it?
Torture Island.
No, it's called Imrali Island, which is in the middle of the Sea of Marmala.
Oh.
Dun, 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 dun.
This fucking prison usually holds like multiple people. They
Yeah.
clear it out and they make it a solitary prison for one person, which is Apo, right? They just put him on an island in a prison meant for a ton of people. They put their other prisoners somewhere else.
Did they think he was gonna like make friends or something?
I don't know. They just dedicated this weird fucking isolated tower
That's
to.
so strange.
Well, they
Yeah.
have to keep metal away from him because he's Magneto. So he's in a giant prison of one.
Made of plastic.
It's all made of clear plastic.
Yeah. So Apo's living alone in this prison now, and he's been there ever since. But as he lived in this prison, he's very bored, right? So he starts reading.
What? No cable?
Yeah, he starts reading this anarchist named Murray Bookchin. Murray Bookchin is sort of like a Chomsky-ish libertarian socialist. And when I say libertarian socialist, this is kind of a confusing word because the word libertarian kind of got co-opted by what is now known as libertarians.
By the Koch brothers.
Yeah. And the dorks with goatees and shit and the Bitcoin people. Like those people stole the word from a sort of specific like freedom-oriented group of like leftists. Like,
Got it.
so when Chomsky says he's a
Like left communist type, like no rules.
sort of, yeah. It's in the realm of like anarchists. Like anarchism libertarian is a big thing, and it came before
That's like
capitalist libertarian.
That's like a new fiscally conservative group or something like that, calling themselves the Hell's Angels.
Yeah.
And they're even farther left than libertarians, but they're just like, yeah, we're the Hell's Angels now.
Yeah, it's fucking dumb.
I guess it could be like that.
I'm glad it worked because I'm still not sure it did.
I don't know. MILF con gas bomb.
Poop, poop.
The most dangerous thing about MILFCON is patrolled by the Hell's Angels.
So Apo starts reading Murray Bookchin, and Murray Bookchin is this anarchist libertarian who sort of like has this idea called communalism. It's a really specific.
Is that wife swapping?
Yeah.
It's a wild, wild country out
If I
here,
have
boys.
a wife and you have a wife, we can trade without the government getting involved.
I'm sold. Where do I sign, Johnson?
Yeah, it's you put all your keys in a bowl. Yeah.
I don't know how to drive stick.
You're
Okay.
gonna learn, honey. You gonna learn.
Who's that?
Shish kebab.
Shish kebab. Was the recording out for that part?
I don't remember.
Okay, great.
I feel like that's when I turned it on, but I'm not sure. Shish kebab. So Murray Bookchin is like this guy who actually at some point crossed paths with Bernie Sanders. Like he's a modern guy, right? So Apo goes down this crazy wormhole and he starts writing his sort of new thesis, which is based on Bookchin's communalism, and is able to release it from jail. And he's sort of his new thing is he creates this ideology called democratic confederalism, right?
I like it.
Which has these very specific tenets, and it is then picked up by this burgeoning group in northern Syria, the Rojava region, called the YPG. right?
Ah.
The YPG translates to the People's Protection Army, right? So it's basically this Kurdish leftist group that's really, really into to Apo's like new sort of leftist
Democratic confederalism.
yeah, democratic and federalistic. Like he sort of moved from being a communist to being an anarchist is the easiest way to sort of explain the difference between these two.
Good for him.
He's really into like not having a state now, and they are too, right? So what's really interesting about the YPG is because they're based on his confederalism, and they're a subsect of the PKK, which is the one he started when he was like a communist. They have a little bit more like strict anarchist ideologies. So one thing about the YPG that's really interesting is that they don't have ranks. They have like generals, like you can become a general, but that doesn't really mean like you don't have to yell at, you don't have to like
you need
salute.
consent to pass an order.
Yeah.
Do I get 2 scoops of meat at lunchline?
You probably get a bunch of fucking rice and beans out of a big trough because they're extremely like
Poor.
well, also just like communal.
More on the rice and beans. Where do I sign up? Where do I sign up?
One soldier in the YPG described it as you could walk up to your generals, like you could slap him in the back of the head and ask him for a cigarette. Like it's very anti-hierarchical of the in the sense of military as we.
So how does anything get done?
Well, because there's a collective, like everyone believes in the war they're fighting, right?
Right.
It's not a machination of a state. It's like they're just fighting because they actually believe in this non-state ideology. And part of it is that the YPG keeps like capturing villages and towns, and sort of like winning them from being loosely held by ISIS, right?
Right. Okay, so I've read about this before about anarchists here who've volunteered and flown over and joined the armies over there.
Right. I'm going to get to him in a second.
Oh.
Okay.
If you're interested in non-hierarchical armies, you can read about the Spanish Civil War, and there's lots on what it was kind of like to interact with this weird body where no one's in charge, but they have guns.
Yeah.
So like in...
But in Espanol.
Yeah, well, yeah.
No pasaron. All right, that was the slogan of the people fighting Franco in the Spanish Civil War.
Yeah, they're really into
No pasaron. You shall not
Lord,
pass.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
No pasaron.
No pasaron.
Yeah. No pasaron unless you answer this riddle.
El bolog.
Vuela, idiotas.
So interestingly, the
if you got that, you're welcome.
the fucking the YPG's slogan is no state, no caliphate, right? Because they're fighting ISIS.
Oh, yeah.
And they're very against ISIS's right-wing sort
Down
of
with the
like,
caliphs.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's very fucking cool. They
Yeah.
also, because they sort of they liberate people from their towns.
Yeah.
One thing that happens is that a lot of the towns they liberate, the people, like the guys in the towns, are at first very grateful, but then very mad because their wives fucking leave once the new government is this like anarchist no state thing with all these new rules, because the YPJ has a sister like faction called the YPG has a sister faction called the YPJ. YPG means People's Protection Unit. YPJ means Women's Protection Unit, right? So there's an entire group in the YPG of strictly only women. They wear these flowery veils, or these black flowery veils rather. They wield Kalashnikovs. And their structure is very egalitarian. So every office within the YPG has to have a man from the YPG and a woman from the YPJ. Like there are 2 generals for each whatever, right? Very cool. The men wear these black veils on their heads in solidarity with the women. It's like fucking tight, right?
That is just tight. Please
I never
continue.
coordinate any of my outfits, and I would love to.
Yeah, finally, I don't have to think about what to wear every day.
And since they're this weird broke like freeganish fucking army, like they don't have boots and they don't have like military gear. They're like wearing like sneakers and shit, and like these these veils and like just regular ass clothes.
Yeah.
All right. So this whole thing is happening, right? It's really interesting, and they're fighting ISIS because in the early... Let me pause real quick. Okay, so the YPG and the YPJ sort of exist for a long time, and eventually they sort of fill this vacuum that's left in northern Syria because Assad, who is fighting these rebels, pulls his troops out of northern Syria.
Yeah.
He pulls back, right? But because he pulls back and there's this vacuum created, there's space for the YPG and YPJ to fill in and thus take a certain amount of land. And there's also, and that's how they form Rojava. Rojava is the state without a state. But there's also a vacuum in like Raqqa, for example, because Raqqa is this this place that was in 2013 won over by like rebels. And when I say rebels, whenever these big events sort of happen, it's always like a mixture of like the leftists I'm talking about, like the YPG and the YPJ, and the SDF, which is the Syrian Democratic Forces. There's different sort of shit going on. But Raqqa is won by rebels at one point and quickly taken over by ISIS. But because there's this power vacuum, ISIS has been able to come in and sort of like, you know, just take over everything while it's still in a state of flux.
Right.
They ISIS up the place.
Right. It's like Killmonger shit.
Yeah. And I will get back to exactly that event in a second, but first I'm going to tell the story of Piss Pig Granddad, right? So while all of this is happening, there's this guy in the States in like the Bay Area who was like a Marxist-Leninist, like sort of punk rocker guy who was a petty criminal and was addicted to heroin, right?
Isn't he a florist?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I don't know. He had a bunch of weird jobs. Literally, I posted a story about him online one time when I first read about him, and my friend Randa was like, I fucking know that guy. He used to tour with Personal and the Pizzas, and he slept on my couch.
Whoa.
Personal and the Pizzas is a great, like, sort of garage rock band, if you don't know. So, small world. This guy's, like, fucking everywhere, right?
And just for context, this person's only relevant because he's the American in the army, so he's like how we would understand it.
Yeah, and he's also relevant because he had a Twitter presence.
He's extremely online.
Yeah, he's extremely online. He's the first extremely online revolutionary in Rojava.
Right. The most important role.
He's not that important, but I'm telling you.
He's the minister of communication.
In terms of retweets, he's the most important person.
and that he
The
knows
struggle.
and that he knows what a retweet is.
Yeah, he's got the best fave star of anyone. He's in all the good group DMs. So his story isn't important, but it's like interesting. And the reason it's interesting is because like there was so he had a Twitter presence. I'll start here. Okay, so this guy, his name's Brace Belton.
Hey,
right?
Brace.
He's addicted to heroin. He goes into rehab.
Not here.
He starts reading all of this, like, this Oppo shit, this Confederalism, this Murray Bookchin stuff.
Democratic Confederalism.
He sees these, like, websites that are like, come join the struggle in Rojava. And he's, like, stuck in a hospital, so he's so bored that he gets really into it, goes down a wormhole, right? He gets clean. He tells his girlfriend, "I'm gonna go do some humanitarian work." And
wow, you really turned it around, Brace.
Yeah, and then she slowly figures out like he's gonna go fight in a fucking war against ISIS. Like, why?
I'm going to erase humans.
Erase human.
Yeah. So he goes, and all the while he's got kind of a Twitter presence because there's weird Twitter at the time is real big. You know, you got Drill and all that bullshit out there.
Yeah.
So he's got this Twitter account called Piss Pig Granddad, and that's how everyone knows him. And it's weird because he's reporting on this story, and so everyone's sort of reading about like, oh, it's this Rojava thing. But then he's also just doing all these weird Twitter jokes about like, you know, taking pictures of dogs and just going, look, I found a good boy, like that sort of weird Twitter shit, and just like, you know, his name's Piss Pig. It's fucking weird, you know. Pictures himself
like an old man who drinks piss.
Yeah,
but he's telling you the facts.
It's a bit piggish about all of it, though.
Yeah, so it's like these weird, like, kind of Twitter jokes in between just like statements like the fucking guy with the goat left and now we're fucked for dinner. Like, really weird, right? So Rolling Stone sends a journalist out there to interview him. Or, I'm sorry, I think they interviewed him when he got back. I don't know. There's this great story in Rolling Stone.
And that's where I enter. I read that article. Continue.
Yeah. It's awesome. If you're listening and you want a great read, let's look up. It's called Anarchists versus the Islamic State, right? So this guy's out there, and he does this story where he tells all this fucking amazing shit. They were specifically out there to interview the like Western sort of transplants that that went out to fight in Rojava just because it's an interesting story. Most of the people fighting in Rojava are like Kurds and shit from the area, but there's this, dream to try to create another like Spanish Civil War situation where you recruit all these Western people, right?
The Republican armies.
So like in the fucking in the interview, they talk about all this shit where like, there's these Westerners who are like punk rock kids who just got really, really, really into politics and shit and like sort of figured out and what was going on, and like they all sort of have this elitist fight with each other where they're like, they'll make fun of you if they see you with a cell phone or with like a dollar bill or something.
Oh, wow.
At one point, some guy is talking about how like he thinks it's bourgeois to use like wipes to wipe your ass because they just shit in holes and like use like pots of water out there or whatever.
Right.
And then an Italian guy turns around and goes, "If it's bourgeois to wipe your ass, I no longer want revolution."
He was raised in France.
Yeah, I don't know why I did a French accent.
Zut alors! This is minutia, and again, just let me know if we're going too far off book here. But I thought he was an ML. I didn't think he was an anarchist.
ML
Marxist-Leninist, like
Pistic
Stalinist,
Granddad?
Communist kind of guy. I think I read the same article we're talking about.
You might be right. I might be sort of like mixing and crossing streams here a little bit. Because, I mean, I reread it a little while ago, and I think I remember them saying he sort of moved. He was a Marxist-Leninist when he was getting into this shit, and then he sort of evolved into democratic confederalism, which is derived from it and not in opposition to it. But I could be talking about
Those
school.
people just love to fight each other. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like they would object to it. But
it sounds like there are a lot of conversations like this happening in Rojava among the like 75 fucking Westerners that went out there.
that's true. And like, if you haven't already heard this story, the minutia probably doesn't matter to you by this point in the game.
Yeah, I'm gonna get some of the minutia wrong. But what's really funny is because that whole story broke, it opened a lot of people's eyes to what's going on in Rojava, and unfortunately, apparently Jake Gyllenhaal is looking into like playing this guy in a movie without asking him. Didn't ask him, and they're if it's a fucking mainstream
What do we know
American
about
movie,
this guy? He's hot. He's got a body for fighting ISIS.
It's time I grow up and become a piss pig grandfather.
Yeah, I mean they did like he does look kind of like a barista, so like it kind of makes sense. Like they're gonna. But they're going to butcher this story.
I can't wait to see that Act 3, Jake. They're going to sell some tickets.
Yeah.
I will definitely see this if they make it into
Yeah,
a movie.
We should-
100%.
Do you want to go together?
We should do an episode
Sure.
on it if it comes out because they're just going to get everything wrong.
Yeah, I
mean,
can't wait to fucking roast it.
It's going to be filtered through the lens of fucking, Western liberalism, which is how like all this Turkish news gets bent backwards and all that shit.
And
In
have
the
you-
end, both sides are bad.
Yeah, both. Yeah, it's gonna be the moral of the story is both. That's how that fucking Antifa episode of Law and Order sort of ended. Like
The only
who
good
can
guy
know?
was the one selling the newspaper because he was a tradesman.
Yeah. I'm gonna. So, Piss Big Granddad's kind of a funny story because like he does shit like he said that he accidentally committed a war crime and didn't realize it by it's technically a war crime to piss on a dead soldier. Which he did, but he said it was because he was just like there's just so many dead bodies everywhere. He just didn't realize he was pissing on a dead body.
Look, we're all doing it.
Your Honor, the ground was made of dead bodies. I may just be a simple Southern anarchist with no fancy Harvard education.
Can a
but-
man such as himself not relieve himself on the ground?
And you shall address me, Your Honor, but my full name, Daniel McDanielson. Esquire.
I like it. Well, I'm not some big city anarchist. So, as this guy is with the YPG, it's kind of interesting because they get to talk to him as they sort of move forward and take a couple of like locations, right? So, the YPG was narrowing down on Raqqa, which has since I mentioned earlier been turned into like ISIS's like stronghold. Yeah. Like
The
they
dark
had-
city of Raqqa.
They have like a city, like in like World of Warcraft, how your enemy has like a fucking city.
Yeah, well, I'm the warlord of Draenor, so I'm going to really, get my troops out there.
There's always thunder over it.
Always thunder over.
It's a floating castle.
It is a floating castle.
Reappears everywhere.
Yes, the castle of Anorak.
Or there's just a force field around it that you can't go through until you complete a bunch of objectives for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get my sword.
Yeah, so they're they have this ragtag army that's made of like tanks that are like just the fucking cars that they just like tacked shit onto, and they're kind of a joke, but then they successfully like defend a couple of towns and they take over like a couple small places, and suddenly they're this like actual force, right? So they're with Piss Big Granddad as he enters a town called Tal Saman, which is right outside of Raqqa. And they describe sort of like taking over and seeing the remnants of ISIS, and it's like gruesome shit, right? It says they picked through a rubble mixed with skulls and spines. They found a warehouse with a car bomb assembly line and blood-stained man-sized cage.
Wow, this is turning me against ISIS.
I was on the fence before we started the podcast, honestly.
It's really fucking gruesome. They could keep people in cages and shit.
I like the darkness of their flag.
He said there were booby traps everywhere, and at some point when they were like searching through a house, they found a guy with half his leg blown off because he stepped on a fucking landmine inside somewhere. And then like this is just sort of like a little flourish from the guy's point of view, but he says like a fucking YPG guy just like walked outside covered in a smoke cloud and dust and just like lit up a cigarette. Pretty cool, right?
That wasn't his first explosion.
Imagery.
So what's going on in Rojava is really interesting, and I would implore everyone to look into it because it's really cool and it's ongoing. But I want to turn now to their enemy, which is ISIS, because they have this whole no state, no caliphate thing. And it's really interesting that the YPG is fighting ISIS and our enemies of Turkey, because it's kind of, a lot of people don't put this together, but
Where are you going with
Turkey
this?
and ISIS are kind of allies. Like,
No.
ISIS is thought of as
Dun,
this like,
dun,
kind
dun.
of band of like roving people or whatever, but they're like, the way Turkey kind of plays it off is that like instead of like outwardly endorsing ISIS, they sort of just like let them do things and then don't attack them. So you're effectively using ISIS as a front line if you're like, we're just not going to do anything while you kill all these people, and we're on the other side of you, right? That's like a Coast Guard almost
A
for you.
true strategician keeps his enemies close.
General?
Yeah.
Is that you?
That is what's happening down in the southern belt.
Have
Oh,
you
man.
ever read Sun Tzu?
This is gonna go off on a whole thing, but I've been watching Into the Badlands. And
Yes!
Yeah. The main the Baron, who's this big character in the show, has this very vague Southern accent.
Oh, it's
that
so
changes every
vague.
other line.
Oh, it is.
A man as myself has certain tastes.
It is Maryland, Louisiana, Southern ambiguous. It is all of that. It is a swath. Well, I do declare. How about that? What deal?
It sounds like an English person trying to do an American accent.
Right. They don't,
Yeah.
Right. They didn't graduate.
Yeah.
So that's the best they could do was like that guy.
Oh man, that fucking rules.
Great show. Check it out. Lots of karate.
Lot of karate. Bitch.
Shish kebab.
Back to Kurdish liberation.
Yeah. Poop.
Poop.
Poop poop. So all this is going on in 2014.
Oh, that's now.
2014. You really don't know what years are.
I mean, like in this like era, like in the past 2 decades.
Okay,
Well,
well,
this is nowish.
Yeah,
All of this has been happening the last like 7 or 8 years.
Okay, the-
Big Granddad stuff.
Oh, okay, the last
he didn't
time.
have Twitter in the 70s.
Well, you don't know that.
They're all doing the funky chick.
Yeah. Hi, it's the 70s, and my name is Piss Pig Granddad.
Now watch me while
I'm the one person doing irony.
Okay, so we're in 2014.
Comedy is Gallagher and Suspenders, and who's that cokehead that died? Famous guy, Mork. Anyway, all right.
Robin
Andy
Williams?
Yeah, I
Who-
couldn't remember his name for some
You just
reason.
call him that cokehead who died?
Yeah,
Technically, yeah.
I mean, show me where I'm wrong. Show me the lie. He's dead. He was really into cocaine.
Cokehead who died as Robin Williams.
I would have guessed like 20
So
more
many.
people.
Mark Maron, but he's still alive. I mean,
Oh man, you want to know a funny story about Mark Maron? It's a complete non sequitur. One of my roommates was hanging out with this chick with just like a really thick like Spanish accent. She just, I don't know how to describe this other than just not from my world to some extent. Like this is just like some chick from Brooklyn, and she like she saw these microphones on this table, and she came up to me and she goes, "Do you like Mark Maron?" I was like, "Yeah, do you?"
I know microphones, Mark Maron, right?
Yeah. I was like,
I'm not gonna make fun of you, stupid.
Who are your guys?
"Who are your guys, fool?"
Can you like lock the gate?
I'm not allowed to do this accent.
Pow! I just shit my pants. Okay, that was dumb as fuck. Anyway, so the final part of the story I'm going to get into is in 2014.
That's now.
This guy.
Not now.
I'll pause real quick. All right, what's up, what the fuckers? Boomer lives or something. Hi. Hello, this is Jake. So that is the end of the first part of this episode. We covered Oppo and a little bit of Rojava. If you'd like to hear the third part, the sort of third written out conclusion to this series, which is about ISIS. It's all from ISIS's point of view. It's going to be behind the paywall on our Patreon. All you got to do is subscribe to our Patreon, donate, $5 a month as a subscription. You get access to all our bonus content, which for this month, we got this. Hopefully get some more out before the end of the month. What you'll do is you go to patreon.com/poddamnamerica. You subscribe, and then you'll be given an HTML, which you can then plug into your podcast subscription app or whatever. I use the shitty iPhone one. I hate it. I'm told there are other ones that are good. But any of these, you can basically just add a podcast directly from the RSS link. If you do that, then you will be subscribed to our secret pay pigs only feed. Yeah. So check that out. Kick in a few shekels, and keep listening and keep supporting, and check me out when I'm on tour and listen to all my pals' cool stuff. See you next week.